Mark Rogers TV, just a few minutes after the Buckeyes went to East Lansing and made a statement against Sparty, 49-37, falling behind 7-0, 14-7, and 21-14. The Buckeyes battled back and then cruised in the second half. Really dominated the football game again in winning by 12 points over Michigan State, the team that has been the best team in the Big Ten for the last year and a half after certainly defeating Ohio State in the Big Ten championship game last year. Ohio State has looked much like a paper tiger since, but they proved that they've got some mettle in going to Michigan State and winning over the Spartans 49-37. Of course, we've got to start this out by talking about that guy, JT Barrett, a quarterback for Ohio State. The rough outing against Navy, the highly publicized rough outing against Virginia Tech that needs more explanation than the national narrative that the offensive line could not block the Bear defense of Virginia Tech. His outside receivers were not winning the one-on-one battles, but Barrett took the hit with 3 interceptions. Virginia Tech, that albatross, has been hanging over Ohio State's head ever since and may follow them all the way to the college football playoff selections. But on this night, Barrett was amazing against this Michigan State defense. Not the same Spartan defense that won the Rose Bowl last year, but a very, very good top 15 or 20 defense nationally. JT Barrett, 16 of 26, 300 yards, 3 touchdowns, no interceptions. He ran it 14 times for 86 yards. The statistics really don't do him justice. You had to see it to see the poise, the timing of the throws, something that impressed Urban Meyer early on in the season, despite Barrett not getting necessarily the notoriety or the results early, was that he throws on time and that he anticipates extremely well. He doesn't have a gun, but he is a poised quarterback. And consider this. He missed the last season in high school due to a major injury. And of course, he was redshirted last year. This kid has not played. He's basically in his second year in college. Has not played since his junior season in high school. 2 straight years. Non-competitive football on the field for JT Barrett, and suddenly he's playing in the Big Ten. He's playing teams like Virginia Tech and now Michigan State in his 9th football game. Buckeyes moved to 8-1, defeating Michigan State. Also want to talk about the efforts of Ezekiel Elliott, ripped up the Michigan State proud Sparty defense. 23 carries, $154 and 2 touchdowns. And this is a Michigan State defense that took out possibly the best running back in college football, especially with Mr. Todd Gurley on the sideline. Amir Abdullah gained 45 yards, 24 carries against Michigan State. Does that mean Elliott's better than Abdullah? No. But we're crediting Ezekiel Elliott's emergence as the replacement for Carlos Hyde. And also in Barrett's performance and Elliott's performance, outlining the performance of the Ohio State offensive line. Again, much maligned in having issues against Navy and most notably against Virginia Tech. And in the game a couple weeks ago in Happy Valley when the Buckeyes survived against Penn State 31-24, the offensive line not looking strong in pass protection. But on this night, they gave JT Barrett time. They opened the lanes for Ezekiel Elliott. The offensive line was exceptional with 4 new starters from last year. Devin Smith, the target of the first 3 passes of the game as Ohio State threw its 7 of 8 plays in its first drive to establish we're going to throw first and set up the run second. Devin Smith on the go route after setting up and sitting down for 3 or 4 passes went deep on that 44-yarder that really separated the Buckeyes in the second half as they went up 35-24 as he completely burned the corner, and JT Barrett looked off the safety just long enough to throw in a beautifully placed football for the 44-yarder. Devin Smith, 6 catches for $129. He's been a kid in his 4 years at Ohio State who has hauled in big touchdown receptions. When I say big, I don't mean in big games. I mean long touchdown receptions, a lot of yards per catch, but then he disappears for weeks. On this night, 6 for $129. He is the 3rd Buckeye with at least 25 touchdown receptions career, trailing just David Boston and Chris Carter. I would not have believed that Devin Smith was 3rd on the all-time Ohio State receptions touchdown list behind those 2 gentlemen. On the flip side for Michigan State, Connor Cook not at his best. The stats weren't bad at 25 of 45, but I think that speaks a lot. Barely 50%. Did throw for 358 yards, 2 touchdowns, no interceptions. Ohio State dropped one. Eli Apple could have had a pick. Also, there was another interception that looked to me, even upon further review, that it was a pick late in the game. Didn't matter in the outcome. So Cook could have thrown 2 or 3. The other unit on this football team for Ohio State that I want to point out is the secondary. Much maligned, ripped up by Jared Abbrederis and a number of receivers last year. Lost Bradley Roby, a first-round cornerback, to the Denver Broncos. Also, C.J. Barnett and Christian Bryant, 2 of the best safeties in the Big Ten, gone from last year's team that struggled in the secondary. So you lose 3 NFL players off a struggling unit. Those guys were missed in the Orange Bowl against Clemson, and Sammy Watkins and Martavis Bryant. Then you bring in Eli Apple, a freshman, highly recruited cornerback. Vonn Bell, who was pressed into playing time last year as a freshman, also a blue chipper coming out of high school as a sophomore now. But Durand Grant, the senior, the one senior of the group out of Akron, was linked up to Tony Lippett, probably the most productive receiver this season, big name receiver that plays in big spots for a big team. And Grant given that assignment against Tony Lippett, and he really shut down Lippett. Some possible injury issues with Lippett that he suffered during the game. He was limping around just a bit, but Grant did an exceptional job, as the Buckeyes usually like to designate corners on the broad side and the short side, but they had Grant shadow Lippett, and it worked. The Buckeyes, coming down the stretch, have Minnesota next week, a team that dismantled Iowa in a pick'em game, 51-14. Then they've got Indiana, and then arch rival Michigan at the shoe. For Michigan State, basically playing out the year, trying to get to the best possible bowl game because the college football playoff is shot. And unless Ohio State inexplicably loses 2 Big Ten games, Michigan State cannot get to the Big Ten championship game. So it's going to be Ohio State against the winner of that round robin now between Nebraska, Minnesota, and Wisconsin, with some huge games coming up the last 3 weeks of the season in the Big Ten West to decide the Western winner. So for Michigan State, and trying to finish out strong and possibly a fringe top 10 team, Maryland, Rutgers, and Penn State for a proud defense that once again gave up 568 total yards to the Ohio State Buckeyes. So what does the College Football Playoff Committee do with the Buckeyes now? The lightly regarded schedule, the loss to Virginia Tech that looks worse by the week, but to consider JT Barrett's second start, and that was a long time ago, and this team looks to be much different at this point, not just offensively with Barrett at quarterback, but defensively as well. A much improved team, the best Ohio State defense we've seen probably since 2010 under Jim Tressel, that team that won the Sugar Bowl. All right, Buckeyes fans, love to hear from you. Also, Michigan State fans, you've owned the Big Ten for the last year and a half. You still have an extremely strong program. Disappointing night at home against Ohio State in the statement game that you needed to win the Big Ten and also get to the college football playoff. Would love to hear from you now on Mark Rogers TV.